It's excellent stuff to see this. I mean, an app for a shipper, right? Who thinks of this type of stuff, right? Obviously,
the folks at Shipwell.
The folks at Shipwell does, but it makes perfect sense because they're checking on their shipments all the time, now more than ever, right? And to give that type of technology and to be able to look at the things that are
in the palm
broken
of your hand.
And not have to check everything that's fixed right there in the palm of your hand, frees you up to do all kinds of stuff.
All right, we're going to take a quick break this morning. We'll be right back with Ryan Schreiber from Metaphora coming up in just a few minutes.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.
FreightWaves is the #1 source for transportation and logistics news. FreightWaves.com provides you with in-depth news coverage, data, and insights from the leading industry journalists and market experts. On FreightWaves.com, you can also watch the only streaming TV network dedicated to freight. FreightWaves TV provides you with coverage you won't find anywhere else. However you like your news delivered, check us out online or on the FreightWaves app.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Thursday morning. It's time to welcome Ryan Schreiber, Vice President of Industry and Development over at Metaphora. Ryan, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, what's going on,
We're
Ryan?
gonna have Vernon here too at some point. Yeah, you guys probably saw when I was waiting here in the green room. He'll probably pop his head up at some point.
I was going to mention I saw a friend there running around chasing you when you were getting up in the green room.
He wants to be freight famous, just like his dad, I guess.
I guess so.
I love it. I love it. So, are you working from home, Ryan? I guess that's what's going on, right?
Yeah, where in the world is Ryan Bradley Schreiber this time? Yeah, I'm at home. This is actually the first week this calendar year where I've been at home the whole week. But I've been sick. Like I had to go. I got walking pneumonia apparently. So just
nice.
FYI on that front. Yeah.
Well, then we'll keep our distance.
Though, so yeah. I'm not contagious. It's like pneumonia.
Oh,
I guess you can't. Yeah.
So you
as long
gotta
as I don't cough directly into your mouth.
We'll be good. You got to slow down a little bit, Ryan.
We're not going to talk about the last time that happened, Ryan. We said we were going to.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we don't need to go there. Nobody here needs to hear about that.
Nobody wants to know anything about that, my friend.
So Ryan, as you mentioned, you've been a busy guy, specifically going from conference to conference, talking all about kind of what's going on in the industry right now. And let's talk about TIA, which was about 2 weeks ago, and we're going to continue this conversation with Ann Rinke a little bit later.
All right.
But one of those common themes that came up was company culture and kind of this reevaluation of how does culture work in the space when you're talking about location strategy as well. You know, people don't want to come back in the office, and I don't think that that's a shocking fact, right?
A lot of people don't. Some people do. It's interesting though, but it's a great topic.
Some do, some don't. Yeah. By the way, all-star lineup today. I mean, Grace is on today. Jason Traff is on today. I mean, Ann's on. I'm glad that I could make the cut.
Well, thanks for filling in for the person who bailed out on us. Yeah,
I mean, I'm always, I may not come when you call, but I'm always on time. So, like that is brokerage and culture might as well be synonymous, right? I mean, and so at the TIA conference that this is what we're talking about is nothing new. We've talked about it absolutely every year at TIA, and I've been going since probably 2011 or so. Outside of the pandemic year. But some people do it as you said. Some people want to go back to the office. Some people don't. And so a lot of the conversations that we've been having, both at TIA and other places, is twofold. How do I accommodate, folks, some of my high performers? How do I deal with low performers? How do I create a flexible environment if that's what I want to do, if that's what I believe is my winning strategy? But then also, like, how do I build a location strategy that can support the growth that I want the most economically, which can also mean exploring onshore versus offshore, not just home versus everybody in the office. So that it's getting more and more complicated. When 5 years ago, it was just kind of a question of like, where do I have my offices? Now there's a lot of other considerations that go into it as well. And those are the conversations that we have.
Even the nomad life comes into it, right? I know a couple people that I've known over the last 3-4 years that have, they convert school buses, whatever it happens to be, and they're just nomadic now. It's a real thing that's out there. It's another thing you're dealing with. But building that culture has got to be really, really difficult to do. How do you do that with some that are here and some that aren't?
Yeah, the reality is that it is difficult. Like, if we shouldn't downplay the fact that it is hard work, that it is really difficult. I think in the early days of the pandemic, people, including myself, said, hey, it's not that hard. It can be done. But the truth, and it can be done. But we did, I think, downplay a little bit the difficulty. And I think that, for me and certainly for some other folks, we've seen, as people have returned back to the office and as we've seen more of these hybrid environments, there is a little bit of a difference, but it still can be done. The question is about kind of company values. Do you value is the value you have in everybody being in the office? Because that's not culture, right? Culture isn't that you have to kind of be arm in arm with each other, but it is important having people together, building those in-person connections, because humans are social animals, after all. And so there are some really good tips and tricks to the extent that you want to build a remote culture, whether it's remote first like Shipwell or Metaphora, or it's a hybrid remote culture, or to the extent that you need to be considering, or you are considering, offshore and nearshore options, because you want those people to be a part of your team as well. And it's really about engagement at the end of the day. It's not about being in the office, but it's about engagement with people.
Brian, I want to kind of get your thoughts around an employer's mindset when you're kind of tossing up the idea of, do I allow this flexible work? Do I allow this hybrid? Because I think a lot of people choose the hill to die on of, no, you have to be in the office. You can miss out on a lot of really great, really qualified talent that way, because they're not necessarily looking for that, or they're not willing to relocate and uproot their families, et cetera, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit to how to change that mindset and kind of get away from the only productivity happens within our four walls?
Yeah, I think that the toxicity in that mindset is the only the last part, the only productivity happens within our four walls, right? Because just like any other business strategy decision, you want to build a strategy around how you think you're going to win. And if you think you're going to win by everybody in the office, well, I think And from what I've seen, it puts you at a competitive disadvantage because, as you said, Kaylee, you may miss out on some really great talent. It's okay. You can build a winning strategy around everybody being in the office. It's more expensive. There are some other trade-offs, and certainly we can talk about those. But that idea of the only productivity happens within the office is the toxic mindset. And it's one that's really suggests that there are other issues within the business that create the lack of productivity elsewhere. And that might be, usually that's going to start with training, right? It's going to start with effective training, effective training, coaching, and hiring, identifying talent. So those are the three main places to look if you're really in an environment where you feel you've maybe false started, or you really can't kind of figure out how to get people to be productive elsewhere. That's really where the main places you're going to need to be.
I'm thinking about this kind of power that's been almost thrust into the hands of employees over the last 2 years or so. And now as we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are stories on social media going around right now about Goldman Sachs, this massive company, being like, you have to come in and fill our office space again. Mm-hmm. And people just being like, you know what? I'm done, like I'm leaving, right?
Yeah,
and they're kind of sticking it to Goldman Sachs. And I think that this is a lesson that a lot of people can learn, is that if you're not willing to adapt with your workforce, then you're going to lose out on a bunch of your workforce, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, I think that one thing that's really reasonable that I think gets lost in kind of some of us who are at this point talking heads, I've run a brokerage. Like I've had to sit there and make some of these decisions.
Sure.
And certainly like the decisions that I had to make back in 2016, 2017, 2018, before I joined, Carrier Direct in 2019, were they were a lot less complex. I didn't have to worry about the health implications of in office versus from home. But, I certainly understand that. And one thing that gets lost is the expertise of the leadership. So, it's reasonable for leaders to say, right now, we can't take that on. Like, I, as a leader, may not be effective enough as a coach to be able to deal with a remote workforce. And so right now, that strategy isn't available to me. And so, that might be the decision of a company like Goldman Sachs. I don't know, that they're pretty big. There's probably other considerations in play there. But I think one of the things that, we need to grapple with in our industry, instead of dictating to people exactly what they have to do every time, is, okay, so who are you as a business? That's reasonable. And you should consider that in every vertical and every angle, right? It doesn't matter what the market rate for Chicago to Atlanta is. It matters that you don't buy at market rate. So you shouldn't quote your customer market rate and beat up a carrier team because they can't buy at market rate. Strategically, long term, you need to figure out how to change the things that are, that you'd like to change in your business, like buying better, or like being able to create a remote environment or coach better, or whatever it is. And then deal with building strategies also today that don't just hope and pray that you'll be successful. And so, the same is certainly true here. And you have to, the key then, Kaylee, I suppose, is yes, there are going to be some trade-offs and negative implications. Even if you go to a fully remote first environment, there are people, as Vincent said, that want to be in the office, that crave that need that. Maybe it's to get away from their kids, but maybe it's just to be a part of that, and be able to tap somebody on the shoulder just because it feels good.
Yeah.
So you're going to deal with trade-offs no matter what. It's about really understanding what those are and then building plans and strategies to get you where you want to go from here today.
Yeah. And dealing with that remote workforce, it's good to be able to accommodate that type of stuff, but it is not easy to do. There's so many different things. When they're coming into the office, you can tell why their productivity might be down. You can tell if it's a personal type of thing. You can have a much more empathy for situations, and they're more connected and less likely, I would think, to actually leave because of some of those understandings that are out there. But I wish we had a couple more hours to talk, and hopefully we'll do that in person here really soon, Ryan, because I really enjoy these conversations. I know the audience does. Let's do it. I'll see you there, my friend. We will talk greatly.
18 days or something like that?
I think it's 18 days.
That sounds about right to me, my friend. We'll call the Hogs together, my friend.